Hi, welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be talking through exactly what is event planning. So perhaps you've been to a music concert, you've been to a birthday party, perhaps a wedding or something similar like that, a major event perhaps, and maybe you've just sat there and wondered, how does all of this come together? How do I get into this as a career? There's lots and lots of different areas of the events industry that you could work in, and there's lots of different ways and different things about each of them. But actually, there's some pretty core skills that go across all of the different sectors that kind of describe how you would go about planning a particular event. So when I was at university, I had this question, and I was not doing an event management degree, and I ended up falling into events after university, and I kind of had to teach myself how events worked and how they ran. I didn't really have, and I would really have loved a kind of guide. So by the end of this video, I want to describe to you exactly what event planning is and exactly the different steps that you go through in planning an event. I want to explain the difference between event planning and event management. These are two slightly different terms. Depending where you are in the world, they also mean slightly different things as well. And it's not always clear what is the difference between event planning and event management. Are they one and the same? Are they interchangeable? We'll go through some of those ideas through the video. So a quick overview of what exactly is an event. Well, events are typically temporary in nature. They bring together people, and also they celebrate something unique. But the other kind of important thing that connects all events is that there's a planning process attached to them. Now, depending on the size of the event, this can be a very big and long planning process, or it can be quite relatively short. But still, there are some common terms, there's some common things that will join all different types of event. The events industry itself covers a wide range of things, so everything from personal events to business events and even cultural events like festivals. And again, all of the different skills required for each of these are different, but they can also be the same. Here in the UK, and I've got to say this figure is a pre-COVID figure, the events industry is worth just short of £40 billion. It's a huge amount of money, and actually it's larger than some of the sort of traditional industries in this country like farming. Globally, the events industry, and this is around the world, is expected to reach a value of $2,200 billion by 2028, which is an astounding amount of money. But it just goes to show the industry is going to continue to grow after the COVID pandemic, and there's huge opportunities for people within event planning. So what's the difference between event planning and event management? Well, I have been both, I think. I've also read an awful lot about from different parts of the world as to what people and where they kind of use these terms. Now, broadly, what the conclusion that I've kind of come to is this, that planning is kind of holistically looking at it from start to finish. So a planner will ultimately take the brief from the client, and if you're interested in how to give a client pitch, check out this video. And then take that through the kind of design process and the planning process. How does the event meet the aims of the original aims, be it of a client or their own aims? And then there's a process of management that really kind of focuses on the actual operation of the event. And that's really where the event management starts. And that's more to do with the actual delivery of the event on site from kind of start to finish. And then also afterwards, there might be some evaluation, which is a very important part of events. So the planning process is the sort of the umbrella that goes all over it, and the event management part is that kind of central operational element of actually delivering the event. Now, some people may disagree. And there are institutes of event management, and there are organisations and qualifications for event planners, and the difference between perhaps that term in Europe and that term in the US is very different. I myself, through my career, have done what I consider to be all of those functions, and I've had the term event manager, I've had the term event officer, I've had the term event planner. So it really kind of depends on the organisation, the sector, and even the country in which you're operating in as to which kind of term you use. Ultimately, it's a set of skills from start to finish at various points during an event to deliver that holistically. So event planning or event management can be undertaken by an individual or an individual working in part of a team. And event planners can be freelance in that they move from company or client from time to time, or it can be an event. You can be an event planner in a very sort of corporate environment within a large organisation, large business sector. Again, the roles the names, the titles are different. Ultimately, actually though, this core skills that surround event planning are quite similar. They're very similar, and let's have a look at those now. Broadly, I'd say event planning is 4 phases. So you have the first phase where you are sort of evaluating the brief, or you're coming up with objectives for the event. And this is quite honestly one of the most important things you'll do with events, because you need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve with the event. And by setting good, smart objectives enables you to understand A, what you need to do, and B, when you've done it, what does success look like? So that's kind of what the first section would be for me for event planning. The second part for event planning would be the detail planning. So this is the part where you're actually planning the event. So imagine the sort of creative side where you're booking all the elements, or you're coming up with the design, the theme, that kind of thing, and booking everything ready to go for the event. This phase would also involve selling of any tickets, promoting the event, getting people enrolled on a course, getting people to buy tickets for conferences or exhibitors for trade shows, that kind of thing. So this section, and not to make light of it, is probably one of the largest sections of event planners. So that's the second part. The third part is the actual event delivery, and we could argue this is the event management part, where you're delivering the event on site from the moment you arrive, where the event's going to take place, the build, the actual event time, and then the takedown afterwards. That event management part, and that has a very, very specific set of skills in order to do that don't necessarily involve the creative elements at the start of the planning process. So there are people who will just work on event sites and deliver that part. Production managers, site managers, that kind of thing. And they don't get involved in the creative planning part at the start. The fourth and final part of event planning is the evaluation and review afterwards. Now, I said at the start it was really important to set objectives. It's also really important after the event to do some kind of evaluation to assess, have you met your objectives, and what could you do better next time? So this is an important part of the event planning process. Often gets forgotten, but it's still really important to understand where you could improve in the future and what the successes were. So as I mentioned earlier, careers in event planning vary massively. You could be working as a freelancer, or you could be working in a company. And there's not one way of getting into the industry. There are people who find themselves working in events. Perhaps that applies to you through just their normal job. They started off as a marketing manager and they were asked to do events. Or you have gone through an educational route. And I teach event management at a university, so I'm very familiar with that route, where you leave school and then go and get a degree or some other qualification before then going into the industry. And there are people that have kind of just worked their way up through the industry. So there's not kind of a set way to do it. There are kind of advantages and disadvantages of each of those, and that's kind of beyond the scope of this video. But ultimately, to become an event planner, people are looking for, when you go for jobs, people are going to be looking at your experience and your qualifications. And that can be a lot of different things around the world, but ultimately that proves your worth, prove your capability to be able to deliver the events, and that's quite an important thing. So that was a very quick overview of what event planning is. I hope that's been useful. If it has, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see my guide on how to actually deliver an event, click the link here, and I'll see you soon.